My name is Hannah, and I've worked with many students, including those with special needs. Now, I help teachers pass their certification exams at 240. And today, I'm going to help you. This video is going to prepare you for the TExES Special Education EC-12 test, also known as TExES 161. In this video, we're going to cover three things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the most likely concepts that will be on the test, and we're going to look at a few practice questions. Now, the TExES 161 exam is broken into 4 domains: understanding individuals with disabilities and evaluating their needs, promoting student learning and development, promoting student achievement in English language arts and reading and in mathematics, and foundations and professional roles and responsibilities. Each domain has between 2 and 5 competencies nestled under it. Let's go ahead and take it from the top. Domain 1 consists of 2 competencies. In simple terms, the first is all about the categories of disability and their effects. The second covers evaluation and assessment. Let's dig into the first. IDEA. IDEA stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This legislation governs how special education is implemented in school. Get ready to hear this acronym a lot. So, part of IDEA categorizes disabilities. There are 13 categories defined by IDEA. To receive special education services, a student must qualify under one of these 13 categories. You will need to know the defining characteristics of the categories, as well as the impact on learning. But the good news is, we have that covered in our online study guide. You'll find a link to it in the description. Now, let's talk about the second competency under Domain 1. The other part of this category is all about evaluation and assessment. Some positive news. If you are familiar with assessment terms through your educator preparation program or studying for the PPR, you'll be prepared to see them through the lens of special education on this exam. Expect to see terms like formal, informal, formative, summative, criterion referenced, curriculum-based, portfolio, percentile rank, and grade equivalent on your exam. Want a sneak peek at what some of these terms mean? Let's take a look at an actual 240 video you'll see when you subscribe.
Now let's talk about the differences between formative and summative assessment. Formative assessments are assessments for learning. They are used to guide instruction, meaning they're administered to assess students' progress toward meeting a learning objective, so teachers can adjust instruction as needed. They help teachers answer the question, what do I teach next? Summative assessments are assessments of learning. They are used to gauge instruction by determining whether or not students mastered a learning objective. Teachers use them to answer the question, what did my students learn? Meaning, what do they know now, or what are they able to do? So remember, formative assessment informs instruction toward the learning objective, while summative assessment sums up students' performance on the learning objective.
Next, we'll dive into Domain 2. This is one of the biggies. It's worth 1/3 of your score. Competencies 3 through 7 fall under it. Let's get into the first one: planning instruction. 2 simple words that carry so much weight for a teacher. Now, I'm going to go over some amazing concrete concepts you should know. Based on my experience, I have identified a few key concepts that are highly likely to appear on the test and give you a nice leg up. For Domain 2, Competency 3, the key word is collaboration. Now, as a special educator, you will collaborate a lot with general education teachers, administrators, parents, speech therapists, occupational therapists, the school nurse. In fact, some form of the word collaborate comes up 9 times throughout the exam standards. Now, remind me to talk some more about collaboration once we make it to Competency 12, but for now, our focus is on collaboration and instruction. Be prepared to collaborate with general education teachers to plan instruction for students receiving special education services by knowing what they need to learn based on grade level standards. You'll contribute your expert knowledge on how to help students learn the content based on instructional strategies that support the students' needs. Also, a big part of collaborating to plan instruction is ensuring the students' IEPs are followed in all educational settings. An IEP is a student's individualized education program. All students receiving special education services have one, so this is an essential term to know. Okay, ready to talk about the next competency? This one is all about assistive technology. Well, that sounds fancy. And it can be, but it can also be as simple as a pencil grip that helps students hold their pencils in a way that makes it easier to write. The most important thing to remember when answering questions about assistive technology, also referred to AT for short, is that it should support both the student's special needs and what they're trying to do. For example, a device for playing audio recordings of reading material could benefit both a student with a visual impairment and one with a specific learning disability in reading who is focusing on answering comprehension questions. The AT aligns with both the need and the task. That's the key takeaway for this competency. But there is more to know. You could spend your time Googling tech levels of AT for ADLs, the SETT framework, and categories of AT used for different needs and activities. Or you could watch this video we created for you in our study guide. I'd follow Laura's lead and get the guide, but it's your call. All right, let's keep working through domain 2. The next competency is all about promoting educational performance. No big deal, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the most important part of a teacher's whole job. There's a lot to know about this, but let me help you out with a key concept: differentiation. Differentiation is beneficial to all learners, but it is especially important for those with special needs. Differentiation is all about meeting students where they are and providing what they need to help them progress. Remember this from earlier? You can use the same mode of thinking for answering questions about differentiation. Find the answer that best aligns with the student's needs and what they're working on. You may be distracted by other answers that look like great things to do for your students, but don't forget, differentiating should always support what students need to be successful and what they need to do. Let's move forward, shall we? Our next competency focuses on behavior and social skills. Let's discuss some key terms you should know for this portion of your exam: PBIS, FBA, and BIP. Half the battle of passing this test is knowing your acronyms. And if we were to turn that into an acronym, it would be HTBOPTTIKYA. Anyway, PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. It is a proactive approach to promote positive behavior for all students. Sometimes students require extra support to promote positive behavior. This is where an FBA and a BIP may come in. An FBA is an evaluation focused on behavior that strives to determine what is causing the undesired behaviors. Students undergoing a special education evaluation, students with an IEP or 504 plan, and students in certain serious school discipline situations are eligible for an FBA. All behaviors have a purpose. Students act in certain ways for a reason. An FBA seeks to figure out what these reasons are. BIP is short for Behavior Intervention Plan. A BIP is a formal written plan to address and improve student behavior. It defines the undesired behavior, describes why it is occurring, and outlines a plan to use strategies and supports to help. So remember, an FBA determines why a behavior occurs, and a BIP is a plan created to improve the behavior. Now, we've scratched the surface with some key information here, but to really prepare yourself for your exam, you'll want to dig in a bit more. One competency left to go in this domain. Let's get to it. This competency covers transitioning students out of special education services and into the next phase of their lives, because as much time and attention teachers pour into their students, it will eventually be time for them to leave the nest. As emotional as that may be, it's comforting to know that a plan must be established before a student receiving special education services leaves high school. In fact, in TExES, this planning starts when the student is 14. Like many components of special education, collaboration is key for transition planning, and it is required that the student be invited to participate in the process. Okay, we've made it through domain 2. Let's skip ahead to domain 4. We'll continue to focus specifically on the special education material and then move into domain 3, which covers language arts and math. Don't worry, I promise I won't forget. Domain 4 counts for 20% of your test score. It includes 3 competencies: one on foundations, one on legal and ethical requirements, and one on collaboration. Let's get into foundations of special education first. You know how we spend a lot of time talking about acronyms? Let's go ahead and cover two more. Do you remember how IDEA governs how school districts provide special education services to students? Well, there are six main components of this legislation. We've already discussed one of the most important need to knows, the IEP. But now let's dig into FAPE and LRE. FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. The biggest takeaway here is that every student is entitled to, well, a free and appropriate public education, no matter the disability. Schools cannot deny services. It's against the law. LRE stands for Least Restrictive Environment. This means that, to the maximum extent possible, students with disability should be educated with their non-disabled peers. In simple terms, students receiving special education services should not be removed from the general education classroom unless it is necessary for their learning, which is not up to an individual teacher to decide, but must be determined by a committee based on evaluation and outlined in the student's IEP. Now that our minds are on the laws that govern special education, let's stay on that train of thought and discuss legal and ethical requirements. Here's a big one. Parents must give a written consent before certain parts of the special education process take place. Written consent is needed before an evaluation can begin, and also before special education services outlined on an IEP can initially be implemented. All right, let's get into the lighter part of this domain. I told you earlier that we'd circle back to collaboration, and here we are. Educating students with special needs is not a solo gig. When it comes to collaborating, special education teachers wear a lot of hats. Resource, advocate, communicator. These are some of the most important collaborative roles of a special education teacher. When answering questions from this competency, always go with what is in the best interest of the child, keeps the parents informed and involved, and, of course, follows the law. All right, now on to the domain that covers English language arts and math. Domain 3 counts for 1/3 of your test score. It consists of two competencies, one for ELA and one for math. That's simple enough. Let's start with ELA. A big portion of this competency covers foundational reading skills, such as phonological and phonemic awareness, the alphabetic principle, word analysis, and fluency. Reading comprehension is also addressed, as well as writing skills and visual media. Let's pick on two of these and tie them together. Fluent reading supports comprehension. It is easier to understand reading material when it's read with accuracy and prosody at an appropriate speed. Does reading fluently come easily to all students? Absolutely not. Is it important? Absolutely yes. The whole point of reading is making meaning of the text, and as we've established, reading fluently helps students do so. So, if students are struggling with fluency, there's a strategy for that. Actually, several different effective strategies. The right methods will depend on which component of fluency a student is struggling with. But in general, it's important to make sure that they are reading at their current reading level and that they have lots of opportunities to read out loud, especially repeated readings of the same text. Now, that's just one concept from this competency. If you're ready to brush up on all of this ELA content to make sure you're ready to nail this portion of your exam, we have it ready for you in the study guide. Link below in the description. All right, now everyone's favorite, math. Even if math isn't your favorite, you will still need to solve a few math problems on the test. But it's just a few, and you do get a calculator and a formula chart. You'll see more questions about how to teach math, so let's dive in there. Some questions will just have you pick the best action given the educational goal. If you've taught anyone math before, this will be easy. This means knowing when to use manipulatives, inquiry, exploratory play, real-world connections, and even technology in games. For example, manipulatives are great for introducing a concept or working through a misconception. There are also some questions on classic pedagogical concepts like backward design, just now applied to math. And if you need to brush up on any of this, it's all in the 240 guide. You might be asked how to intervene when a student is falling behind in math. Remember, all interventions should be specific to the student's needs, appropriate given the goals listed on the IEP, and selected based on the root of the issue. And those are the big things to know in math. Now that wasn't so bad, was it? Now that we've gone over some of the big concepts in our 4 domains, let's look at some practice questions to show you how these concepts can appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free practice test below. At the end, you get a score report on how well you did on the test, and then you can subscribe to 240 and get all the practice questions you need to be 100% confident for the test. Did I mention the 240 study guide has a money-back guarantee that you'll pass? Now for questions. Here's one where we need to be able to classify disabilities. This question is asking us to identify a trait of a student with a specific learning disability. Choice A describes a student with an intellectual disability, so we can cross that one out. Choice B describes a student with an emotional disability, so we can get rid of that. Choice D describes a student with a speech or language impairment, so that's not it either. But choice C, the student demonstrates deficits in academic achievement when compared to cognitive abilities, is an indicator of a specific learning disability. So choice C is correct. Remember how I told you Competency 2 was about evaluation and assessment? Let's look at one of the ways it is reflected in a question. Maxwell is a 5th grade student who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also referred to as ADHD. During his annual IEP meeting, the special education teacher shares the results of Maxwell's most recent unit tests in the 4 core subjects. This data falls under which type of assessment? The choices are summative, formative, norm-referenced, and informal. A summative assessment evaluates student learning at the end of a unit of study. This is the best choice. Did you need to know the student had ADHD to answer this question? How about the setting being an IEP meeting? No, this question is purely about types of assessment. It's just put through the lens of a special education situation. Let's look at one more. A general education teacher is concerned about teaching an upcoming unit to the student receiving special education services in the class. What is the most effective way for the special education teacher to collaborate with the general education teacher? The first step in planning instruction for a student receiving special education services is always referring to the IEP. The plan has already been created to help the student learn content in class, and it's the special education teacher's responsibility to assure that accommodations are being followed in the general education classroom. Now, let's look at one about assistive technology. A student with fine motor coordination and writing difficulties who receives in-class support with the occupational therapist would benefit from what accommodation? Okay, let's think about our formula. The student needs fine motor support to help them write. The only choice that directly aligns with the need and the task is the use of adaptive writing utensils. While the other choices might seem appealing, they require too much of a leap based on what we know from the question stem. Now, let's take a look at a question from the behavior and social skills competency. A student has shown a significant increase in inappropriate behaviors. These behaviors continue to occur in structured and unstructured school settings. The teacher has not seen an improvement in behavior despite providing specially designed interventions. What should the IEP team consider next in order to support the student? It sounds like this student would benefit from a BIP, but an FBA should happen first. The function of the behavior, along with other important information, must be determined before a plan is made to improve it. Now for a question about special education foundations. Which of the following is a provision of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act? The correct answer here is ensuring that students are provided with reasonable accommodations to access the curriculum. Section 504 is another essential piece of legislation to know for your special education exam. It comes up a lot, along with IDEA. And guess what? We have it covered in the study guide. Let's throw you one about collaborating with parents. A special education teacher is preparing to hold an IEP meeting for a student whose parents do not speak English. Which of the following is the most appropriate way to address the parents' language needs? One of the ways a special education teacher can effectively collaborate with parents is by making sure they are equipped to participate meaningfully in meetings about their child's education. It's not anyone else's responsibility to assure the input is comprehensible to parents. And providing translated documents after the meeting does not allow parents to participate during the meeting. That means Choice D is best. Now, let's see one from the ELA section. Every day, as part of his class's morning routine, a special education teacher has his class clap out the syllables of the day of the week and the month of the year. He then says a simple sentence about the day's activities and prompts his students to tell him how many words are in the sentence. Last, he names an object in the classroom and asks his students to identify the first sound, then share more words that start with the same sound. What type of skills is this teacher trying to promote through all of these activities? All of these activities have to do with sounds. Hearing the words that make up a sentence, the syllables that make up a word, and specific sounds and words are all examples of phonological awareness skills. And finally, let's look at a math question. Okay, we're given a situation with a struggling first grade student. She keeps adding, even if the problem calls for subtraction. The teacher has tried having the student circle the symbol first, but it's not working. What should the teacher do next? It seems like Nia has a conceptual misunderstanding of what subtraction is. Unifix cubes will help provide Nia with a more concrete understanding of the processes of addition and subtraction and the difference between the two operations. That was just a sliver of the questions that we have. There's still plenty more to learn. So, if you really want to make sure you're prepared for the TExES Special Education EC-12 exam, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 Study Guide. It has hours of videos so you can watch or listen while doing chores. It's test-aligned with hundreds of practice questions so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has the money-back guarantee. So, click the link below right now to get started.